Well, hello, friends. Welcome to Investment Immigration Conversations. I'm your host, Carolyn Lee, principal and founder of Carolyn Lee Pllc, a U.S. investment immigration law firm dedicated to helping clients build their futures with investment immigration. Well, I hope everyone's having a great summer. We're having a really wonderful summer here. We are enjoying the sun and the warmth and travel and growth we are building with investment immigration. And a shout out to my incredible team members on this webcast today. I hope everyone is out there doing really well and enjoying this summer also. So today we are going to cover a couple of burning questions, and hopefully we'll address more of your burning questions in the coming webcasts to come. And today we'll be talking about U.S. investment immigration, how much and how long before I get my U.S. permanent residency. So we're talking about permanent residency, which is another term for green card. So that means we're talking about EB-5 investor visas. Something on the temporary side or the non-immigrant side is going to be the E2 visa, and answers to these questions are a little bit different in that context. So today we're talking about EB-5 visas. And when we talk EB-5 visas, we must look through the lens of the EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act of 2022, a massive body of new immigration law in EB-5 recently enacted in March 2022. And I'm very privileged to have had a role in that with a team of incredible professionals at Invest in USA, IIUSA, which is the EB-5 trade association here in the US. That team, along with the drafters on the Hill, were able to bring that bill across the finish line and revive the EB-5 program, which feels really great after a lapse. So let's kind of dive right into it. How much? So when we're talking about the investment thresholds in EB-5, we're talking about two different tiers. There are two tiers. And it depends what tier an investor is investing is dependent on the location of the investment, for the most part. It's not dependent on other things. For example, whether an investor is investing in his or her own company as opposed to investing through a regional center. It's based on the project, okay? And what are these two tiers? There are two tiers based on whether or not the investment is in a targeted employment area, or TEA, or whether it's not in a TEA. If the investment is in a TEA, then the investment is at the lower threshold of $800,000. If it's a non-TEA investment, then the threshold is at $1.05 million. There's a little asterisk next to both those numbers, because under the RIA, the Reform and Integrity Act, the investor must also account for fees associated with that investment. So we want to add on to that. And typically between 50, 75, and 100,000 on top of the base amount will cover in most instances. So 800,000 and 1.05 million with the added fees and costs associated with those investments, also accounted for in the investor's source of funds, which will be documented as a part of the EB-5 petition. The source of funds must be lawful, perhaps a topic for another webcast. What is an investor's lawful source of funds. So what determines whether a project is in a TEA or not? So a TEA is defined as a targeted employment area, is defined as a rural area or high unemployment area. There are also infrastructure projects. This is new under the RIA. So it's a type of project. It's not based on location. An infrastructure project can be anywhere. But if a project is an infrastructure project, it also would qualify at the lower investment threshold. So what's a rural area? A rural area, there's a technical definition for it. Essentially, it's a low population density area. The more technical definition of it is that it's defined as a residual area. It's an area that is not within a metropolitan statistical area or an MSA, which is an area surrounding an urban hub. So it's got to be outside an MSA, and it's got to be outside a town or a city having a population of 20,000 or more. What's a high unemployment area? High unemployment area is an area that has 150% of the national unemployment rate. So you can see that the lower investment threshold is associated with where we want to incentivize EB-5 investments. Likewise with infrastructure. What's an infrastructure project? It's a public works project, as you might imagine, that's administered by a government entity that is under contract and agreement with a regulated EB-5 entity, such as a regional center or a new commercial enterprise. Okay. So how long until an investor might obtain a green card if he or she invests in EB-5? So in this instance, I think a picture may be worth maybe 1,000 or 800,000 words. So let me do a little screen share, and I'll share a graphic with you. Okay. Large this. So this is a timeline of the EB-5 process. It doesn't have the times, the actual times, because they do vary. And there are reported processing times on the USCIS website, which report very lengthy processing times. And in some instances, that would be an accurate representation. Anecdotally, it's less than what is reported, thankfully, generally speaking, based on my experience, but you do want to look at how long this process is taking generally, and look to advisors who can report on the latest in this respect. So the process is this. An investor is going to file an I-526 petition, possibly concurrently with an adjustment of status application, which is wonderful. This is one of the boons of RIA, is the ability for investors to file concurrently adjustment of status applications to get their green card applications going at the same time, as long as there's visa availability, as long as there's no backlog for investors from that country. And at the moment, there is no backlog for any investor other than China mainland-born investors. So the 526 can be filed concurrently with the adjustment of status if there's visa availability. And with that, the applicant can also apply for a work and travel permission at the same time, which is wonderful, because once those issue, the investor is not reliant on other bases of work or travel authorization, which is very nice when the consulates are still quite backlogged in issuing visas for travel. So this is the first node when analyzing how long this process takes, as I mentioned, is how long from the 526 petition to decision, but during which an investor may be able to file an adjustment of status application. If there is a backlog for the investors, then before progressing to the next step, the investor has to wait until there is visa availability. And so this is where the potential wait for backlogged investors would come in. If there's no backlog, right into starting the process for the green card application or the immigrant visa application abroad, if the investor is abroad and not able to take advantage of concurrent adjustment of status filing by being in the United States in a lawful non-immigrant status. Okay, so approval, there's visa availability, start the process for immigrant visa application, which currently takes about a year, at the end of which there's a visa issued on the passport with a validity period of approximately 6 months. And then the investor and qualifying dependent family members come into the United States and start the conditional residency. This is the moment at which the investor and qualifying family members are green card holders with conditions. And the conditions are that the investor must have created the 10 jobs per investor and sustained the investment through the required period of time, at the end of which 2 years after 2 years in conditional residency, the investor would file another application, another petition to remove the conditions on the residency, saying, look, I satisfied my conditions, created the jobs, check, sustained my investment, check, ready to have my conditions lifted so that I can continue with my residency, unconditional, and eventually naturalize if I wish. And so that's that filing. Once that filing is approved, then the investor is an investor in permanent residency without conditions, can naturalize. And this would mark the end of the EB-5 journey. And this process currently takes a couple of years, 2 to 3. Hopeful that USCIS, working very hard on reducing their backlog, will reduce the processing times here as well as here. I am optimistic because we know the agency is very focused on greater efficiencies and reducing processing times. So hoping that we'll see some efficiencies there. But in a nutshell, this is the timeline. This is the process. And this is what an EB-5 investor can expect immigrating through the EB-5 program. So this was quick and I hope informative, and more to come. There is hopefully going to be a little survey at the end of this webcast that will ask you what you would like the next webcast with answers to burning investment immigration questions might cover. So do give us a little sense of what you would like us to talk about next and in future webcasts to come. And in the meantime, thank you for joining us, and we will see you very soon. Take care.